The spaceport of Aurora Prime was alive with movement. Ships of all shapes and sizes zoomed in and out, their engines humming a steady rhythm. People and aliens moved briskly across the terminal, some carrying cargo, others hurrying to catch their flights. Amid this chaos, Jake, a human engineer, moved carefully through the docks, his tool belt heavy with gadgets and wires. He had worked at spaceports across several star systems, but Aurora Prime always had its own unique energy. Bright lights, smells of exotic spices from nearby food stalls, and the constant buzz of travelers from countless planets. Jake was used to routine repairs and maintenance. Today he was checking a small cargo freighter that had a faulty navigation system. The ship's owner, a grumpy merchant from Sirius, had insisted it be fixed quickly. Jake muttered to himself as he climbed into the open engine panel. Sparks flew here and there as he adjusted the circuits. He enjoyed this work. It gave him a sense of control and purpose in a universe that often seemed chaotic and unpredictable. As he tightened a connection, a shadow fell over the panel. Jake looked up and froze. Standing there, taller than most humans and radiating authority, was a woman he had never seen before. She wore flowing robes that shimmered in silver and green, embroidered with intricate patterns that seemed almost alive. Her skin was pale but had a gentle glow, and her eyes, large, violet, and intelligent, studied him with curiosity. She carried herself like royalty, calm and confident, yet with a softness that made her approachable. "Excuse me," Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" The woman tilted her head slightly, a faint blush creeping across her cheeks. She bent down, carefully inspecting the freighter's engine. I am Princess Lyra of the Korath Empire," she said softly. Her voice was melodic like music, and carried a hint of nervousness that she did not often allow herself to show. "I did not mean to disturb you," Jake blinked. "A princess?" He had read about the Korath Empire in reports. They were known across several galaxies for their advanced technology, diplomacy, and strict royal protocol. And here she was, standing casually in his work area, looking every bit regal but slightly out of place. I'm Jake. Just an engineer," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Welcome to Aurora Prime, Princess." She smiled faintly, and Jake felt a strange warmth in his chest. There was something human about her expression, something shy that made her more approachable than the rigid images he had seen in holo reports. As she stepped closer to examine the engine, her royal communicator slipped from her belt and fell onto the panel beside Jake. Reflexively, he reached out and caught it. "Oh," Lyra exclaimed, startled. "Thank you. That device contains sensitive information." Her voice trailed off as she noticed his grin. Jake chuckled softly. "No problem. Hey, sweetie," he said casually, testing the words without thinking. For a heartbeat, the air froze. Princess Lyra's eyes widened, and the blush deepened across her cheeks. No human or even Korathian royal had ever addressed her like that before. "Yes, darling," she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly. Jake's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, did you just—" Lyra's blush deepened. Yes," she admitted, quickly glancing away. "I did not expect that." Jake grinned awkwardly, scratching his head. "Well, I guess that makes two of us." They both laughed lightly, the sound blending with the hum of engines and chatter around them. It was a small, human-like moment that somehow bridged the vast differences between them. But their laughter didn't go unnoticed. A security officer nearby frowned as he observed the scene through the crowd. Princess Lyra was always under watch, and any breach of protocol could cause political ripples across star systems. Jake, however, remained blissfully unaware of the potential consequences. "Are you always this casual with humans?" Lyra asked quietly, still trying to compose herself. "Depends on the human," Jake replied, shrugging. "Some are nice, some not so much, but you seem different. Relaxed, even royal sometimes." Lyra smiled again, a genuine smile this time, and Jake felt the tension of the day fade. They continued to examine the ship together, her asking questions about the circuits, the engine systems, and even human navigation methods. Jake explained each system in simple terms, careful not to overcomplicate things, and she listened attentively, absorbing the information faster than most humans could. After a while, Lyra stepped back, letting Jake finish his work. "You have a unique way of thinking," she said. "You humans, sometimes I underestimate you, but this is impressive," Jake grinned. "Thanks. We've had to survive in crazy places and we've learned a thing or two." Your people have tech that can make entire planets hum, but we make do with what we have and make it work." Lyra's violet eyes sparkled. "Perhaps there is more to humans than I realized." They shared a brief silence, comfortable in each other's presence. Then Lyra glanced at her communicator, remembering the schedule ahead. "I must attend a diplomatic meeting soon. My advisors will be waiting," she said reluctantly. Jake felt a pang of disappointment. He had been enjoying the rare moment of connection, but he understood her duty. "Of course, just take care, Princess, and, thanks for letting me help." Lyra's blush returned slightly and she gave him a small, almost shy smile. "Thank you, Jake, for your help. And your words." Before she left, she placed her hand briefly on his arm, a gesture that felt surprisingly intimate, though polite. Jake's heart raced and he quickly looked away, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. As Lyra walked toward the transport shuttle that awaited her, Jake couldn't help but watch. There was something remarkable about her, not just her beauty or her royal status, but the way she carried herself with both strength and vulnerability. Humans and Carathians rarely mingled so casually, yet here they were, sharing a moment that could have been a scene from an old Earth movie. Suddenly, a message buzzed on Jake's portable terminal. It was from the spaceport security. "Attention. Princess Lyra of the Korath Empire observed an unauthorized interaction with civilian engineer. Report submitted for review." Jake frowned. He had expected some kind of notice, but the formal wording made his stomach tighten. Could this one casual encounter spiral into political tension? He didn't have time to dwell. There was still work to do on the ship, and he needed to finish before the merchant returned. As he climbed back into the engine panel, he thought about her words, her smile, and that faint blush that had turned her royal composure into something human. He realized with a mixture of excitement and worry that this encounter might be more than a coincidence. Perhaps fate had intervened in ways neither human nor Carathian politics could control. Meanwhile, aboard the shuttle, Lyra replayed the encounter in her mind. She had never expected to blush or respond in such a personal way. Humans were unpredictable, often reckless, but sometimes unexpectedly kind. She found herself smiling again, remembering the ease of talking to Jake. No royal protocols, no stiff etiquette, just two beings connecting. Her advisors were waiting, their expressions unreadable, but Lyra barely noticed. In her mind, she kept repeating one thought: Jake. He's different. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, and the spaceport of Aurora Prime shrank beneath them. Stars stretched into long streaks as the vessel accelerated into orbit. Lyra watched silently, thinking about the unusual human who had dared to call her sweetie, and who had received her soft, almost forbidden reply. She felt a strange warmth, a lightness she had not experienced in her years of royal life. Back on the platform, Jake finished the repair and tested the ship's systems. Everything worked perfectly. He wiped his hands and leaned against the ship, gazing at the stars. His mind kept returning to Princess Lyra, the way she had looked at him, the slight blush, her gentle laughter. It was rare to meet someone, human or alien, who left such an impression in such a short time. As night fell over Aurora Prime, the lights of the spaceport twinkled like distant stars, and Jake realized that life had a way of surprising even the most experienced traveler. Somewhere out there, Princess Lyra was moving through the galaxy, and somehow their paths had crossed. The universe, vast and unpredictable, had allowed a small moment of connection, a moment that could change the course of their lives. For now, though, he had work to finish. But deep inside, Jake knew that he would not forget her words, her smile, or that unexpected blush. And somewhere far above him, the princess would also remember the human engineer who had dared to be casual, playful, and kind. The neutral space station Celestara 1 hung in orbit around a small, unremarkable planet, a hub of trade, diplomacy, and occasional intrigue. It was neither fully human nor fully alien territory, which made it the perfect place for tense meetings between civilizations that didn't always trust one another. The corridors buzzed with activity, merchants and diplomats moving quickly from one meeting room to another, some speaking in the melodic Carathian language, others in various human dialects, but all mingling under the neutral banners of the station. Jake had never been to Celestara 1 before, but he felt right at home. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, carrying a small set of portable tools. He had been asked to accompany Princess Lyra on this diplomatic mission, not officially, of course, but in the role of technical support. The Carathian ships were advanced, but small systems could always fail, and the humans on the station had a reputation for improvisation in tight spots. That was why Lyra had requested him personally. Lyra herself floated down the main concourse with her usual grace. Her silver and green robes shimmered softly under the station's lights, and her violet eyes scanned the crowd, noting everyone who might pose a risk. Her advisors walked a few steps behind her, their faces solemn, but she hardly noticed them. Her mind kept drifting back to Jake, to his casual greeting at Aurora Prime, and to the strange warmth that had filled her chest when she replied, "You really don't belong in these formal spaces, do you?" she whispered to herself as she adjusted a small communicator on her belt. Jake appeared beside her almost at the same moment, offering a small smile. "I try to blend in," he said lightly, though his human eyes couldn't fully hide the nervous energy he felt. Being around a princess, especially a Carathian royal, was a far cry from fixing engines on Aurora Prime. Lyra glanced at him, suppressing a smile. "You blend in like a starship in a cargo bay, loud and impossible to ignore," Jake chuckled. "Then I must be doing something right." They arrived at a large conference room, its walls lined with sleek holographic displays and negotiation tables. Around them, representatives from various human colonies and Carathian officials were already gathering. Tension was thick in the air. Both civilizations had been on the brink of conflict before, and any misstep could reignite old disputes. Jake felt the weight of it immediately, but he kept his usual calm. Lyra greeted each delegate politely, her voice soft yet commanding. Her advisors observed her every movement, noting gestures and phrasing. Jake stayed quietly to her side, keeping an eye on the technical systems of the room, but his attention kept drifting to her, to the small ways she adjusted her robes or twirled a strand of silver hair when thinking. She was royalty, yes, but she was also undeniably human-like in the small, subtle behaviors that made her relatable. As the meeting began, Lyra spoke first, outlining trade agreements and technological exchanges between humans and Carathians. Her words were precise, diplomatic, and firm, but Jake noticed a slight hesitation when she mentioned human innovations. It was as if she doubted they could truly match the Carathian standards. Jake leaned slightly toward her, whispering, "You underestimate us. Humans can do more than you think." Lyra glanced at him, eyes wide for a moment, and then smirked softly. "You have a tendency to speak boldly," she replied quietly, her lips twitching with a suppressed smile. "I prefer boldness to hesitation," Jake murmured. The meeting continued, and the tension in the room grew. Some Carathian delegates exchanged subtle, suspicious glances, while human officials took careful notes. Jake kept an ear open for any technical issues, ready to intervene if necessary, but his mind also wandered to the playful moments they had shared, the private smiles and subtle jokes that lightened the heaviness of royal duty. During a break, Lyra stepped aside and Jake followed her quietly. "You really shouldn't show weakness in front of your advisors," he said. "They'll report anything unusual." Lyra laughed softly, a sound so light it barely carried across the empty corridor. "I think they would be shocked to see me laughing with a human," she admitted. Jake shrugged. "Humans are good at shocking people. It's one of our many talents." They walked along a narrow observation corridor overlooking the planet below. The view was breathtaking. Blue ocean, swirling clouds, and the faint glimmer of city lights on the surface. Jake gestured toward the scene. "Humans did a lot of this," he said. "Lots of little mistakes, lots of experiments. But somehow it works." Lyra's gaze followed his, then turned toward him. "And yet you managed to see it clearly," she said softly. "You have a way of understanding things that we sometimes overlook in our meticulous planning." "I guess it comes from surviving on improvisation," Jake replied. "We don't always have a manual. We figure things out as we go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we try again." Lyra smiled, and the blush returned to her cheeks. She shook her head slightly, amused and perhaps embarrassed by the fluttering feelings she had not expected. "I never thought I would enjoy walking the corridors of a human station with you," Jake grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." Their moment was interrupted by a sharp alert on the station's security system. Jake tensed. "Something's not right," he muttered. He followed the signal to a side monitoring station. where a group of suspicious individuals had entered a restricted area. They wore cloaks and carried small energy weapons. Jake's instincts kicked in immediately. He knew from experience that covert attacks often began quietly before escalating into chaos. Lyra noticed his reaction and raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "Trouble," Jake replied. "And we might be in the middle of it." Without hesitation, Lyra followed him as he quietly navigated the station's maintenance corridors. They moved swiftly, staying out of sight. Jake tapped into the security system, accessing cameras and door locks to anticipate the intruder's movements. Lyra watched him work, impressed by his ingenuity. She had seen advanced Carathian technology, but humans had a way of using limited resources with unexpected creativity. They reached a junction near the restricted area and paused. Through a small viewport, they could see the cloaked figures tampering with one of the station's critical communication relays. If activated, it could disrupt all communications between human colonies and Carathian fleets, a disaster waiting to happen. "We need to stop them," Jake said quietly, pulling a small handheld device from his belt. "And we need to do it without alerting the entire station. Too many witnesses could cause panic." Lyra's expression hardened. "Then we act carefully." Together, they devised a plan. Jake would disable the relay from the control panel, while Lyra would use her Carathian authority to create a distraction. The plan required perfect timing, coordination, and trust that neither had yet fully placed in the other. But as they exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passed between them. They were partners in this moment, and failure was not an option. Lyra stepped into view, her robes flowing dramatically. "Citizens of Celestara 1, she called, her voice amplified through the corridor. "I require your attention immediately." The cloaked figures looked up, startled. Jake used the distraction to access the control panel. Sparks flew as he worked, bypassing security locks and rerouting energy flows. Minutes felt like hours, but finally the relay shut down safely, leaving the intruders confused and disoriented. Lyra moved in, her presence commanding. "You are in violation of station protocols. Surrender now," she demanded. The cloaked figures exchanged glances, then slowly lowered their weapons. Jake stepped beside her, offering a reassuring nod. "Nice work," he whispered. Lyra's blush returned, but this time it was mingled with admiration. "You two handled that very well," she said softly. "And you," Jake replied, smiling, "handled it like a princess who's also secretly an excellent strategist." They escorted the intruders to the station's security personnel, who took them into custody without incident. The danger had passed and the immediate threat was neutralized. But the encounter left a lingering sense of connection between the human and the alien princess, a bond forged not through ceremony, but through shared challenge, courage, and trust. Later, as the meeting resumed, Jake and Lyra shared a brief smile across the conference room. No words were needed. They had faced danger together, and in that moment, they were equals, partners who had learned to rely on each other, even across the vast differences of their species. As the day ended and the delegates departed for their quarters, Lyra whispered to Jake, "You know, you are not like any human I expected to meet." Jake chuckled softly. "And you're not like any alien princess I expected to meet either." "Guess we surprised each other." Lyra smiled, a soft blush still lingering. "Yes, we did." The shuttle that would take them back to the station's main diplomatic hub awaited, and as they walked toward it, the weight of their responsibilities settled once again on Lyra's shoulders. But for the first time, she felt a sense of relief, even joy at having someone by her side who could see her as a person, not just a princess. Jake, too, felt a spark of hope. The universe was full of chaos, danger, and political tension, but sometimes it also allowed moments of connection, laughter, and trust. Moments that could change everything. And so, side by side, human and alien princess moved forward, not just as diplomat and... The neutral space station Celestara 1 had settled into a quiet rhythm after the earlier disruption. Delegates returned to their quarters. Merchants closed their stalls and automated drones buzzed through the corridors, performing routine maintenance. On the surface, everything seemed calm. But beneath that calm, a storm was quietly brewing. Jake and Princess Lyra walked through the station's dimly lit maintenance corridors, away from the main halls. They were moving cautiously, checking security feeds and communicating through discreet channels. Jake's experience in improvisation and quick thinking made him alert to the slightest anomalies. Lyra, though a royal diplomat, had a sharp mind that could read situations quickly. Together, they were a formidable pair, even if neither had fully realized it yet. "We should check the secondary power grid," Jake said, pointing to a narrow corridor that led to the station's engineering sector. "If anyone tries to sabotage systems again, they might try it there first." Lyra nodded. "Lead the way." Her voice was calm, but there was a subtle tension underneath, a recognition that danger could appear at any moment. As they approached the grid, Jake noticed movement in the shadows. Figures cloaked in dark uniforms slipped through the side corridors, moving with practiced precision. He tensed. "We've got company," he whispered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Rebels, they must have regrouped after the earlier failure." Jake's mind raced. They were outnumbered, and the rebels had clearly planned for stealth and speed. But he didn't panic. Panic was a luxury that could get both of them killed. Instead, he scanned the environment for options. Small maintenance tunnels, emergency hatches, even the overhead service conduits could be used to their advantage. "Follow me," Jake whispered, pulling open a narrow maintenance hatch. "It's a tight squeeze, but it'll keep us off their radar." Lyra hesitated only briefly before trusting him. She had seen his instincts in action, and she knew that humans often relied on ingenuity over brute force, a lesson her people rarely practiced. Together, they slid into the hatch, the metallic walls closing around them as they moved through the cramped, dimly lit tunnels. The rebels, unaware of their exact position, swept through the corridors below. They carried small energy disruptors, devices capable of cutting communication lines and disabling security systems. Their plan was simple: isolate the princess, create chaos, and force political concessions. But Jake and Lyra were not so easily caught. Emerging from the tunnel near an old maintenance bay, Jake peeked out through a small viewport. The rebels were searching methodically, their attention divided between their mission and the need to avoid security cameras. "We need to keep moving," he whispered. "They'll find this hatch soon." Lyra nodded, gripping the edges of the hatch to steady herself. "Where to?" she asked. Jake thought quickly. "There's a small orbital platform nearby. It's mostly abandoned, but it has a few old maintenance drones we can use for cover. If we move fast, we can outflank them." The princess hesitated. "And if we're caught?" Jake smiled faintly. "Then we improvise. That's what humans do best." Lyra chuckled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. It was rare for her to laugh in such circumstances, but the shared humor, even under threat, made her heart feel lighter. She realized that this human beside her, this engineer, was unlike anyone she had ever known. He faced danger without fear, but not recklessly, he thought, planned, and adapted. They moved swiftly, sliding through service corridors, ducking behind piping and storage units and using their combined knowledge of the station's layout to avoid detection. Jake's familiarity with human and alien systems allowed him to anticipate the rebels' movements, while Lyra's authority and keen observation ensured they weren't surprised from behind. Finally, they reached the orbital platform, a semi-abandoned outpost with docking bays for small maintenance ships and a few functional drones. Jake quickly accessed the platform's control panel, activating one of the drones. It hovered silently, ready to provide distraction or defense if needed. Lyra surveyed the area. "We might be safe here for a few minutes," she said, though her violet eyes were still alert. "But they won't give up. They want me and they will find a way." Jake nodded. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." He tapped a few commands into the control panel, activating the drone scanners and locking doors that could provide the rebels access. "We need a plan," he said. "Something that buys time and keeps us alive until we can contact station security." Lyra's mind worked rapidly. "We could use the drone to lure them into the maintenance bay, then trap them with the doors," she suggested. "They won't expect the platform to be occupied." Jake grinned. "Exactly. Humans call it a diversion. Works almost every time." They implemented the plan, moving quietly to a concealed control room overlooking the maintenance bay. Jake guided the drone toward the rebels, its small lights blinking, drawing attention. The rebels noticed immediately and followed, assuming the platform was empty. Lyra triggered the platform doors, sealing the rebels inside the bay. Confused and trapped, the intruders activated their disruptors, but Jake had anticipated this. He quickly modified the drone to emit an electromagnetic pulse, temporarily disabling the devices and leaving the rebels disoriented. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "You are in violation of station protocols and Carathian law. Surrender immediately." The rebels exchanged panicked glances, realizing their plan had failed. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. Jake moved beside Lyra, ready to intervene if necessary, but it wasn't needed. Her authority alone was enough to maintain control. As the security team arrived to take the rebels into custody, Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jake leaned against the wall, grinning. "Well, that was fun," he said, though there was an edge of seriousness beneath the humor. "Glad you make a good commander in tight spots." Lyra smiled faintly, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. "You make a good partner," she said quietly. The words were almost lost in the hum of machinery, but Jake caught them. They shared a moment of quiet laughter, the tension of danger fading slightly. For a brief time, they allowed themselves to relax, even as the weight of their responsibilities loomed. In that laughter, in that shared victory, a bond had been cemented, one built on trust, courage, and mutual respect. Jake glanced at her, noticing the subtle changes in her posture, the way her shoulders relaxed just slightly. "You know," he said softly, "I think you smiled at me before." Back on Aurora Prime, Lyra's blush deepened. Yes. It was unusual for me," she admitted, "but it felt natural." Jake grinned. "That's the thing about humans. Sometimes we do things without thinking, and sometimes those things turn out better than expected." Lyra laughed quietly, a musical sound that echoed softly through the control room. "Perhaps humans are not as reckless as I thought," she said, her violet eyes twinkling with amusement. Jake shook his head. "We're reckless enough to survive, but careful enough to avoid total disaster." "Works for me." The moment of levity was brief. A new alert flashed on the drone's sensors, a small group of additional rebels approaching from another docking bay. Jake's grin faded, replaced by focus. "Looks like our luck isn't finished yet," he muttered. Lyra's expression hardened. "Then we continue. Together." They moved swiftly, coordinating silently. Jake guided the drones to create obstacles, while Lyra used her authority to misdirect and delay the rebels. Every action was precise, every movement calculated. They were a team, two beings from different worlds, adapting to danger with a synergy that neither had expected. Finally, the additional rebels were neutralized, unable to breach the orbital platform's defenses. Jake and Lyra stood side by side, breathing heavily but victorious. The station's security team arrived soon after, securing the area and ensuring no further threats remained. Lyra turned to Jake, her expression softer now, a mix of gratitude and admiration. I did not expect to rely on a human like this," she admitted. "Yet you were invaluable." Jake shrugged modestly. "I do what I can. You handled your part brilliantly, too. Couldn't have done it without you." They shared a quiet chuckle, the tension of the day giving way to camaraderie. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to be ordinary, just a human and an alien princess who had survived chaos together, who had laughed together, and who had begun to understand one another. As night fell over Celestera 1, the station quieted. Lights flickered softly, reflecting on the sleek surfaces of the orbital platform. Jake and Lyra stood together, looking out at the endless stars stretching beyond the station's viewports. "Do you think humans and Carathians could really work together?" Lyra asked quietly. Jake smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the distant starlight. "I think we already are. And I think there's more to come if we keep trusting each other." Lyra nodded, a soft blush still on her cheeks. "Then, let's see where this goes, Jake." They walked back toward the main hub side by side, a silent understanding between them. The universe was vast, full of danger and uncertainty. But in that moment, they knew one thing. Together, they could face whatever came next. For Jake, the galaxy felt a little smaller, a little warmer, knowing that somewhere among the stars, an alien princess trusted him. For Lyra, the burden of royalty felt lighter, tempered by the presence of someone who saw her as more than a title. The Galactic Summit on Celestera 1 had begun. The main hall was enormous, filled with representatives from dozens of human colonies and Carathian officials, as well as delegates from neutral star systems. The chamber gleamed with polished metal and glowing holographic displays. projecting each civilization's symbols and flags in a careful display of diplomacy. Everyone was here to negotiate peace, trade, and alliances. But underneath the formal speeches and polite handshakes, tension simmered. Jake moved through the crowd with Princess Lyra at his side. While officially his role was technical support, unofficially he was here as her companion and confidant. Their experiences on the orbital platform had created a subtle, unspoken trust, one that neither royal protocol nor human formality could break. He adjusted his utility belt and scanned the room, watching for anything unusual. Lyra noticed his alertness. "You are always watching, aren't you?" she asked softly, a small smile tugging at her lips. Jake glanced at her. "Someone needs to make sure nothing ruins your summit." Lyra chuckled quietly, the sound warm and musical. "I suppose humans are useful for more than just machinery." Their humor, private and light, contrasted with the stiff formality around them. Delegates greeted Lyra with bows and cautious smiles, some whispering to each other, curious about the princess who seemed so human in her mannerisms. Lyra's advisors followed, their faces serious, but she felt calm because Jake was beside her. The summit began with formal speeches. Each representative emphasized peace, prosperity, and mutual understanding. Lyra spoke last, her voice firm and eloquent, praising cooperation between humans and Carathians and highlighting the importance of trust. Jake watched her carefully, noting the way her words resonated with the delegates. Her sincerity was clear, even beneath the layers of diplomacy. As the meeting progressed, Jake noticed subtle irregularities. Certain delegates were whispering, gesturing toward the exit corridors. Security sensors showed unusual energy readings near the lower docking bays. Jake frowned. "Something's off," he murmured to Lyra. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed. "Do you think it's another attack?" Jake nodded. "Possibly. And if it is, we need to be ready." They waited, listening to the discussions while observing the room. A sudden alert on the station's security network confirmed Jake's suspicion. A group of rebel agents, more organized and prepared than before, were infiltrating the lower docking bays, aiming to disrupt the summit. Lyra's face hardened. "We cannot allow this summit to fail. Hundreds of lives, not just ours, depend on it." Jake's jaw tightened. "Then we act quickly, quietly, so the delegates don't panic." Together, they slipped out of the main hall and navigated through service corridors to the docking bays. Jake accessed the security feeds, guiding Lyra past cameras and patrols. The rebels moved like shadows, activating small devices designed to jam communications and lock down doors. Jake's mind raced, analyzing each movement and predicting their next steps. "We need to disable their devices before they reach the summit hall," Jake whispered. Lyra nodded. "And we need a distraction to keep them off us." They arrived at a maintenance platform overlooking the docking bay. Jake quickly rigged a small drone with holographic projections and noise emitters. The drone would simulate movement, drawing the rebels away from their path while Lyra prepared a command sequence to lock the doors remotely. As they set the plan in motion, the rebels noticed the drone and charged toward it, thinking it was a human guard or valuable equipment. Lyra pressed a panel on the wall, sealing the doors behind them. The rebels were trapped in the docking bay, but one of them activated a small explosive device to break free. Jake reacted instantly, tossing a small magnetic pulse grenade near the device. It short-circuited the explosive, rendering it useless. Sparks flew and the rebels stumbled back, surprised and disoriented. Lyra stepped forward, her posture commanding. "Surrender now," she said, her voice amplified and steady. The rebels hesitated, glancing at the disabled devices and the reinforced doors. Jake whispered to her, "They won't try again if we handle this cleanly." Lyra nodded. "Agreed, but we must remain vigilant. More could be coming." They escorted the captured rebels to a secure area where station security would take custody. Their swift, coordinated actions had prevented a potential disaster without alerting the main summit. The delegates remained unaware of how close they had come to chaos. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, Jake and Lyra allowed themselves a brief moment of relief. The adrenaline from the confrontation slowly ebbed, leaving space for shared smiles and laughter. "You were incredible," Lyra said softly, her violet eyes bright with admiration. I have never seen anyone react so quickly under pressure." Jake shook his head modestly. "You were incredible too. I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra's cheeks flushed slightly. Perhaps humans are not as reckless as I thought. Jake grinned. We're reckless enough to survive, careful enough to avoid disaster. Works every time. The moment of lightness faded as a new concern arose. The captured rebels had been part of a larger network, and intelligence suggested that the real mastermind was still at large, potentially planning a more direct attack on the summit. Lyra's advisors grew tense, whispering among themselves. Jake leaned closer. We need to find the main threat before it's too late. Lyra's expression was serious. And we must do it without alarming the delegates. Panic would ruin everything we've worked for. Using security feeds, intercepted communications, and Jake's analytical skills, they traced the movements of a suspicious vessel in a hidden docking bay. It was small, cloaked, and capable of launching an attack unnoticed. We have to disable that ship before it reaches the summit, Jake said. Lyra nodded. And we need to do it together. They moved quickly and quietly, slipping past patrols and navigating service corridors to reach the hidden dock. Jake accessed the ship's control systems remotely, analyzing its energy patterns and weapon systems. Lyra observed the patterns, using her knowledge of Carathian technology to suggest countermeasures. Try rerouting the energy flow from their engines to the containment field, she suggested. Jake's fingers flew over the control panel. On it. That should immobilize them without damaging the ship completely. The ship shuddered as energy flowed in the wrong direction, its engines sparking and faltering. The rebels inside cursed, trying to regain control. Lyra activated the docking bay doors, sealing the vessel inside. Got them, Jake whispered, a small smile breaking through the tension. Lyra exhaled, a mixture of relief and exhilaration. I did not expect to work with a human like this, she admitted softly. Yet you were invaluable, Jake shrugged. I do what I can. You handled your part brilliantly, too. Couldn't have done it without you. They shared a quiet laugh, the bond between them deepening through shared danger and mutual trust. For the first time, Lyra realized that humans were not just unpredictable or impulsive. They were capable, resourceful, and courageous in ways her advisors often failed to recognize. The summit continued without further incident. Delegates discussed trade agreements, security alliances, and cultural exchanges, unaware of the crisis that had almost disrupted the event. Jake and Lyra returned to the main hall, slipping back into the roles expected of them. Yet beneath the surface, a new understanding had formed, one that transcended protocol and hierarchy. During a quiet moment, Lyra whispered to Jake, I never thought I could feel so safe with a human. Jake smiled, and I never thought I'd be trusted by a princess. But here we are. They exchanged a small knowing smile, their private camaraderie hidden from the world. For both of them, the summit had been a test, not just of diplomacy and strategy, but of trust, courage, and the ability to work together despite vast differences. As night fell over Silistera 1, the lights of the station reflected off polished surfaces, and the delegates retired to their quarters. Jake and Lyra lingered for a moment, looking out at the stars stretching beyond the observation windows. Do you think humans and Carathians could really work together? Lyra asked quietly. Jake's eyes reflected the distant starlight. I think we already are, and I think there's more to come, if we keep trusting each other. Lyra's cheeks flushed slightly, a soft smile forming. Then let's see where this goes, Jake. Together, they returned to their quarters side by side. The universe was vast, full of uncertainty, and at times dangerous, but in that moment, they knew they could face it together. For Jake, the galaxy felt smaller, warmer, and full of potential, knowing that an alien princess trusted him. For Lyra, the burden of royalty felt lighter, tempered by someone who saw her as more than a title. The bond between human and princess had been tested by danger, strengthened by shared laughter and sealed by trust. And as the stars glimmered outside the station, neither could deny the growing connection between them, a connection that might just change the course of their lives and the relationship between their civilizations. The Galactic Summit was entering its final day on Silistera 1, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Delegates moved through the polished halls with purpose, discussing agreements, security alliances, and cultural exchanges. Officially, the summit had gone smoothly, though behind the scenes, Princess Lyra and Jake knew how close it had come to disaster. The captured rebels had been dealt with, their network dismantled and the hidden threats neutralized. Thanks to the combined efforts of the human engineer and the alien princess, Lyra walked through the corridors, her violet eyes scanning every delegate with careful attention. She felt a rare sense of calm. The danger had passed, and she had discovered a new sense of trust, not only in Jake but also in the potential of human Carathian cooperation. Beside her, Jake moved with a relaxed but alert demeanor, scanning the systems and observing the flow of people. Despite the tense days prior, he found himself appreciating the peaceful rhythm of the station. "Do you ever get used to this?" Jake asked quietly, nodding toward the bustling delegates. Lyra glanced at him, a small smile on her lips. "I suppose I will in time. But there is always a part of me that remains cautious." Jake chuckled softly. "Cautious is good. But sometimes, it's also good to take a step forward." Lyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment, her mind reflecting on the bond they had forged in danger. "Yes, I suppose you are right," she said, her voice soft. "There are times when trust is the only thing that can guide us." The summit's final session began in the Grand Hall, where delegates gathered to sign agreements and announce collaborative initiatives. The mood was celebratory, though underlying every handshake and smile was a shared understanding. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, but with trust and cooperation, peace could be achieved. Jake and Lyra stood together, side by side, observing the proceedings. When Lyra took the podium to deliver her final address, her voice rang out clearly, firm but warm. She praised collaboration, highlighted the importance of understanding between civilizations, and recognized the contributions of humans in advancing diplomatic solutions. She did not mention Jake specifically, for decorum required subtlety, but her eyes often flicked toward him, a small, private acknowledgement of the role he had played. After the speeches concluded, the delegates approached the signing tables. Lyra guided the human representatives and Carathian officials through the ceremonial procedures, ensuring the process went smoothly. Jake stayed nearby, ready to assist with technical matters or unexpected issues, but his attention kept returning to her. The grace with which she managed the summit, combined with her moments of humanity, the small smiles, subtle gestures, and shared glances made her presence extraordinary. Once all agreements were signed, Lyra stepped down from the podium, her expression softening. She moved toward Jake, and for the first time, she allowed herself a moment away from the formalities of royalty. "You did remarkably well," she said quietly, her violet eyes meeting his. Jake shrugged modestly. "We both did. I think we make a good team." Lyra smiled, a blush coloring her cheeks. "Yes, we do." A light laugh escaped them both, unnoticed amid the bustling crowd. For a brief moment, they were simply themselves, a human and an alien princess, bound by experience, trust, and a shared understanding of courage. The station began to quiet down as delegates prepared to depart, taking the newly signed agreements to their home worlds. Jake and Lyra remained near the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The galaxy stretched infinitely before them, full of challenges, opportunities, and the unknown. Jake's voice broke the silence.
"You know,
I never imagined a human like me would be trusted by a princess." Lyra tilted her head, her expression softening. "And I never imagined that a human could understand me, or help me in ways my own people could not." They shared a quiet smile, the bond they had forged in danger, laughter, and trust shining clearly between them. Suddenly, the communication console beeped with a secure message from one of the human colonies. Jake accessed it quickly and scanned the content. Lyra watched over his shoulder as he read. "An invitation," Jake said finally. "They want us to visit the colony and discuss further collaboration officially." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "Then our work is only beginning." They moved together to the docking bay where a small transport ship awaited. Jake had made arrangements to accompany her as a technical liaison and trusted companion. The shuttle's engines hummed as they prepared for departure, the stars reflected on the sleek metal surfaces. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyra glanced at Jake. "You know, I felt safe with you these past few days, more than I ever expected." Jake smiled warmly. "I felt the same way. We trust each other. That's rare in this galaxy." Lyra's cheeks flushed, but her smile was genuine. "Perhaps that is why I enjoy being around you. Not just as a human, but as you." Jake nodded, understanding her meaning. "And I enjoy being around you not just as a princess, but as Lyra." They shared a brief private laugh, the tension and danger of the past days dissolving into warmth and trust. The transport ship emerged from Silastera 1's orbit, heading toward the human colony. Jake and Lyra worked together in the shuttle's cockpit, reviewing technical systems and communication links, but also sharing quiet conversation about hopes, plans, and the potential of future cooperation. "Do you ever think," Lyra asked softly, "that humans and Carathians can truly learn to trust each other completely?" Jake thought for a moment. "I do, but it will take time. It starts with people like us showing that trust is possible." Lyra nodded, her gaze focused on the stars beyond the viewport. "Then, let's continue to show them." Their journey continued, the shuttle gliding through the expanse of space. Every moment they spent together strengthened their bond, a connection built not on protocol or expectation, but on mutual respect, courage, and laughter. When they arrived at the human colony, they were greeted with enthusiasm. Officials and scientists welcomed Lyra warmly, curious about her experiences with humans and eager to explore the possibilities her presence represented. Jake guided her through technical tours, providing explanations and facilitating interactions between the princess and the colony's engineers. The human colonists were surprised by Lyra's intelligence, curiosity, and humor. She asked questions, offered suggestions, and engaged with them as an equal, not a distant royal. Jake watched her interactions with admiration, realizing that she was not only a diplomat, but also a bridge between two civilizations. During the visit, Jake and Lyra shared quiet moments in the observation deck of the colony. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the vastness of space and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. "You know," Jake said quietly, "we've faced danger, diplomacy, and chaos together. And through it all, we've trusted each other." Lyra's violet eyes met his. "Yes, and that trust, it is rare, valuable, precious." Jake reached out and gently touched her hand. "Then let's protect it. No matter what comes next." Lyra smiled, a blush coloring her cheeks. "Yes, let's." The human colony and Carathian delegation worked together to establish new protocols for cooperation. Trade agreements, security alliances, and cultural exchanges were formalized, laying the groundwork for a lasting partnership. Jake's technical expertise and Lyra's diplomatic skills were pivotal, but it was their collaboration, trust, and mutual respect that made the true difference. As the colony celebrated the successful agreements, Jake and Lyra found themselves alone for a moment, standing together beneath the stars. The galaxy stretched infinitely around them, full of challenges, opportunities, and the unknown. "You know," Jake said softly, "I never expected to meet an alien princess and survive, let alone trust her." Lyra laughed quietly. "And I never expected to meet a human who could handle both danger and diplomacy, let alone earn my trust." They shared a quiet smile, the bond between them stronger than ever. For both, the galaxy felt smaller, warmer, and full of potential. And as the stars shimmered around them, human and princess knew one thing for certain. Together, they could face any challenge, forge any alliance, and create a future where humans and Carathians could not just survive, but thrive. Their journey had begun with danger, had grown through trust, and now, with laughter, cooperation, and a deep bond, it was leading to something new, something hopeful. The galaxy was vast and full of uncertainties, but as long as they faced it side by side, they could make a difference. The stars stretched endlessly, a reminder that new beginnings were always possible. And for Jake and Princess Lyra, this was only the start of a remarkable partnership, one that would shape not just their lives, but the relationship between their civilizations. They looked at each other, smiled, and in that moment, the promise of trust, friendship, and perhaps even more shone brighter than any star in the galaxy.